The align curves action is a great way to manipulate a pair of curves to provide continuity. This continuity can be positional in nature, meaning that one or more of the curves will move to touch the end of another. It can be tangential, meaning that you'll have a constant tangency between the two curves, in effect making them look like the same curve. Or it can be curvature-based, meaning that the two curves will have the same curvature as you flow from one curve into the next. It's very, very easy to use. Let's start off by creating a couple of CV curves. So here's one curve, and here's the other. In fact, hang on. Let me put a little more curvature into that. Something kind of like so. Now notice they're in two entirely different locations. They don't meet up at all. What we're going to do is select this curve on the left first, this curve on the right second. We'll go under Edit Curves and come down to Align Curves, and I'll open up the options box. Let's go ahead and expand this so that you can see everything. And the first area we have is Attach. Now this is basically an extension of the Attach Curves command. I'll talk about it basically as far as bringing the two curves together and making them one. Right now, we won't really worry about it. First off, let's take a look at continuity. We have position, tangent, and curvature. We'll start off by looking at position. This is actually very simple. What this is going to do is take one of the curves and move it so that the end of one curve touches the beginning of the next. You can control who is going to move. You can decide whether the position of the first curve will change. So if I hit Apply, you'll notice the first curve moved to meet the second curve. I can hit Undo. I can modify the position of the second instead. The second curve goes up to the first. Or I can modify the position of both, where we catch an average in between the two. You'll notice both curves actually moved. If you don't want to actually move the position of the curve, though, you can instead only move the boundary, which means the end vertex. So if I were to click on the boundary of the first and click Apply, notice the end vertex of the first curve move down so that it touched the beginning of the second curve. If I hit second, we get exactly the opposite. And if I hit both, you'll notice that both boundaries move together to attach right in the middle. Also, be aware that right now there's no tangency in between these two curves. Even if I hit the 3 key to make them all nice and flowing, we still have a point where they come together. That is where the tangent operation comes into play. Also notice, as soon as you attach this, you get a couple of new things. Are you going to modify the tangent of the first or second curve? And you also have tangent scales, which we'll talk about more in terms of the node that is created, and we'll actually adjust those in the screen so that you can see the difference. First off, you can still adjust the position or boundary of both the first or second curve. So if you want, we can modify the position of the first curve and modify the tangent, or that second CV back from the edge, of just the first curve. And when we hit Apply, notice the first curve moved because we were modifying its position, and notice that its tangency changed as well, meaning basically the curvature changed just a little bit to accommodate a nice flowing tangency from one curve into the next. If I deselect, and actually, let's go ahead and hide the grid just to make things a little easier. It looks like I have a single curve until I select one, and you realize that not only do we have history, but we have two separate curves in between the two. Now, because I have tangent active, I can now use my tangent scales, and what this is going to do is affect the scale of the curve, the scale of the tangency on one curve or the other. So we have tangent scale 1, which is the scale of the first curve. So if I increase that, you'll notice that the tangency gets bigger as I go up, or smaller as I can go down, and I can even make it negative. And I can adjust the tangent scale on the second as well. No matter how I adjust these, you still have tangency in between the two. Think of this as just a way to kind of modify the two curves to get exactly the look you want. So you can pull things out a little bit while still maintaining that tangency. Now, of course, you can make other adjustments inside here as well. For example, if you wanted to modify just the boundary of the first curve, but then modify the tangency of the second, and you can mix and match these to get a variety of different effects, but they all basically amount to the same thing as we've seen already. We're either modifying the position or boundary of one of the two curves, or both, and then we're modifying the tangent of either the first or second curve. The end result is always the same. We'll end up with a nice flowing tangency from one curve into the next. Now, let's undo that, and let's take a look at continuity of curvature. Now, what this is going to do is make sure that these two curves meet each other at a continuous arch in curvature. So let's just go ahead and apply it first, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Boom. Looks very, very similar to what we had before as far as matching up tangency. In this case, it's very, very similar. But what we've done is we've created a constant curvature from one curve into the next. The upshot to using this operation is that now we have curvature scales which we can manipulate as well. So you can control the overall curvature of the first curve the second curve. It's a very nice way to control that. Now, on top of this, we can attach the two curves together when we run the tool. Like if we wanted to maybe use continuity of tangent and modify the position of the second to go up to the first, but modify the tangent of the first to match the second. And we can then attach these together. And just like the attach tool, we can choose to keep multiple knots or remove them. Click apply, and notice now we have a single curve. Now, on top of this, we also have the ability to keep the originals, which you guys have seen on several of these other tools already, which basically means that you have the two original curves left over, which is cool because now you can go back and adjust components and have effects on the final curve because of history. So I guess that's everything for this curve, for this curve tool, and that will wrap it up for this video. Thanks a lot.